After the huge success of the last video like this, thanks for that by the way, I'm back talking about some of the music that's just too weird for most mainstream fans. But this time, I'm going to be taking some of your recommendations and going a lot deeper. I couldn't include all of the stuff that you guys wanted unfortunately, but if the people want one, I can always make another video like this. From a singer so bad that they were accidentally incredibly significant to experimental pop, to a Japanese noise rock group that tried to attack their audience nearly every concert, to the guys from the SpongeBob movie, these are some more of the weirdest bands and artists of all time. If we're talking weird, we gotta start with Farah Abraham, reality TV star turned accidental outsider artist. In 2012, she released My Teenage Dream Ended, a novel talking about her experience as a single mother and her time on the reality TV show Teen Mom. At the same time, she also released her debut album of the same name. It's a strange mix of auto-tune heavy pop and dubstep that only makes sense for something released in 2012. The singing is also completely out of sync with the music because Farah recorded the lyrics without any backing music because it hadn't been made yet, they'd do it later. You would have think she'd have used a metronome or something, but I guess not. Talking about the lyrics though, they actually aren't bad. They talk about what Farah had gone through in her life so far pretty well, I think. It's overall just such an alien experience. It nearly sounds like one of those epic aggressive gaming funk remixes that people make as a joke. But it's not a joke. This album is 100% serious, and it's built up a bit of a cult following over the years. It even influenced what would become hyperpop and PC music. You know, stuff like Sophie or Charlie XCX. And the album is actually only 27 minutes long. I mean, you might as well give it a shot, right? Alternatively, you can hear some more of my thoughts in my video that I made reviewing it a couple months back.
Kids, I'm gonna be quiet and I'm gonna talk.
Juju, or Zuzu, or just XIU space XIU, whatever you want to pronounce that as. I'm gonna keep calling it Juju. They aren't just weird, they're deeply personal, discomforting, and incredibly emotional. Frontman Jamie Stewart makes music that doesn't just talk about pain, it is pain, I guess. That sounded really corny, but you know what I mean, right? And I don't mean that in like a sad indie boy kind of way. It's more in a really confronting way, I guess. The band's sound mixes glitchy electronics, dissonant guitar lines, sparse piano, industrial percussion, and Jamie's trembling warbled vocals. You've probably seen the cover of their 2003 album The Promise if you've been on the internet a lot. It's a really sad listen, but it has some really great experimentation. It reminded me a little of Radiohead's Kid A at some points, so if you like that, you might want to give this a shot. They also made an album covering the soundtrack of David Lynch's Twin Peaks. I haven't watched Twin Peaks, so I can't say how close it is to the original soundtrack, but it's a great listen regardless. I'm not going to go super in-depth into all of their albums because there's a lot of other stuff to cover in this video, and they also have like 25 albums. So if anything that I just said sounded at all interesting to you, definitely give Juju a shot. Again, XIU space XIU. They're basically standing right at the edge of pop music, and it's really interesting. Tom Waits isn't just weird for the kind of sake of being weird. He is an auteur, I'm gonna say. He's as much a character actor as he is a songwriter, shifting personas and musical palettes since he broke into the scene in the 70s. His first few albums had the really American sound of smoky lounges and whiskey, but I think he really came into his own with his 1983 album Swordfish Trombone, all one word. From the opening track Underground, you can tell that he's completely changed his sound, and I'm not really sure how to describe it without doing it injustice. His voice is insanely gravelly, to the point where he sounds like an ogre or troll from a fantasy movie, and the music behind it sounds simple enough, but it's still catchy and complements the singing perfectly. His next album, Rain Dogs, is arguably his best as he doubles down on the sound he established on Swordfish Trombones. He uses super diverse instrumentation on here, making a kind of fusion between folk, rock, and music that sounds kind of tribal, I guess. Since the late 90s, he's completely leaned into the more theatric elements of his music. Take for example the two albums Alice and Blood Money, which both released on the same day in 2002. both of which were made for Robert Wilson Plays, I think. Alice is dreamy and melancholic, while Blood Money is harsh and almost cartoonishly villainous. Like Juju, Tom has loads of albums that I haven't mentioned here, so definitely check him out if you liked what I was talking about. Yes, you read that name correctly. The Butthole Surfers are like psychedelic noise rock. My personal favorite of theirs is probably their 1987 album Locust Abortion Technician because of its really brutal sound. It reminds me of a lot of early Swans work. They remained mostly underground until the early 90s, where they signed to a bigger record label and adopted a more polished sound, I guess. They did have one kind of hit song with Pepper off of their album Electric Larryland. I'm not sure why that was a hit. It's like half song, half spoken word alt rock, but yeah, it's pretty good, I like it. While their music was great, they were arguably more well known for their live performances, featuring things like the members of the band stripping down, destroying their own equipment, hiring a stripper to dance on stage, filling their outfits with condoms full of fake blood and falling over to make it look like they were bleeding out on stage, the stripper they hired, and starting small fires. TLDR, your parents would probably not approve. If you're into more aggressive stuff, definitely give some of their early work a shot. And I know I said at the start of the video that I'd be talking about a Japanese band that had some crazy live shows. Don't worry, they're still coming. Primus, more than anything, are funky, which I think is what you would expect for a band where the frontman is the bassist. Their sound is goofy at times, sometimes also kind of hillbilly-ish, but always technical, and there's obviously a lot of bass slapping. The bass is often an overlooked instrument. It adds so much to the sound of any song it's in, but it's not one that people think about often. However, Les Claypool, the frontman, puts it in the forefront, making it basically the main instrument. Most music has the bass line serving the melody, but Primus flips that on its head. Les's singing is also pretty off-kilter at times, with lyrics that can get pretty absurd. I mean, just look at the names of some of their most popular songs. My Name is Mud, Jerry Was a Race Car Driver, Those Damned Blue Collar Tweakers, Little Lord Fentanyl. I was personally introduced to Primus because Les Claypool played the bass on the Death Grips song More Than the Fairy, which is exactly what you would think a Primus Death Grips crossover would sound like. Trust me, it does grow on you. I say Primus are one of the few bands out there that I think have a completely unique sound. I can honestly say I've never heard of a band fronted by the bass player, or even a band that puts so much emphasis on the instrument. Definitely check these guys out. IGGORE is the stage name of, I'm going to butcher this, Gauthier Serre, I think, who is a French composer, producer, and musical mad scientist, I guess. In my first Weird Music video, I talked about one of my personal favorite bands, Mr. Bungle. IGGORE is like Mr. Bungle's more electronic work, cranked up to 11. I think this guy might actually just be picking the names of 5 genres out of a hat and then making a song out of it, because that is the only way I can imagine somebody coming up with shit like this. Take Camel Dance Floor, for example. It mixes Arabic music, techno, and classical orchestration into one 3-minute odyssey of a track. Or like one of his new singles, like ADHD, starts off as really industrial electronic music, then fusing in what sounds like breakcore, before suddenly switching to flute playing from a fantasy movie, and then going back into some really sludgy electronic sounds, and then going into gothic choir singing that sounds like it's straight out of Bloodborne, then fusing it all together into something that I don't even know how to describe. I'm being completely honest when I say that the first time I heard this stuff, my jaw was on the floor the whole time. Huge shout out to everyone that recommended this guy in the comments of the last video. This is quickly becoming a new favorite of mine. Now, in a complete change in sound and style, we're talking about WEEN. Formed of the duo Gene and Dean Ween, not their real names, unfortunately, these guys are like genre chameleons. Like, look at their first album, The Pod. The song Pollo Asado, or Polo Asado, I think you're meant to pronounce it like in Spanish, is a real slow, chill, kind of Stones track where the lyrics are all spoken word of some guy working as a cashier at a fast food restaurant, I think. This is on the same album as Can You Taste the Waste, which is a super noisy track where it sounds like even the distortion pedal didn't know it could go this far. And later on, we get Oh My Dear Falling in Love, which is exactly what it sounds like. As you can see, they're literally just trying everything in the span of one album. And in a weird way, it works. Their most acclaimed album is 1997's The Mollusk, which does have the song from the SpongeBob movie on it. It's probably their most consistent album, not in that they've ditched their genre-hopping ways, it's more that no matter what they're doing on this album, it always sounds or ties back to something nautical. Whether it be a sea shanty, or a song about a seemingly mythical golden eel, or I'm waving my dick in the wind. Okay, I can't actually justify that one. WEEN balances goofball satire with a high level of genuine musical expertise, and they have a song for every mood you could possibly be in.
We can't deny.
In one word, Jandek's music is haunting. He has an incredibly elusive presence as a musician, despite having over 50 albums to his name. None of them are on streaming services. Actually, he might have over 100 albums. Again, it's hard to know, there's conflicting sources. He purposely avoids having any sort of presence, online or in person. He didn't perform live until he was 26 years into his music career in 2004, and even then, he didn't even announce that he'd be performing the show to begin with, and all of his live shows have been very similar. You can't plan to see Jandek, you just have to hope you'll be at the right place at the right time. His real name is Sterling Smith, he's from Houston, Texas, and he's known for his out-of-tune sounding acoustic guitar playing and his ghostly, pained vocal performances. Although his later work would include more traditional music instruments. While he never signed to a major label, he released everything through his own label, Cornwood Industries. Many projects related to Jandek have credits featuring a representative of Cornwood Industries, such as the 2003 documentary Jandek on Cornwood, which didn't feature any interviews. In 1999, a reporter from Texas Monthly interviewed a guy that they believed was Jandek, and while the man said he was familiar with Jandek's work, he refused to identify himself and just refused to discuss the music at all. If you're into any of Phil Elverum's work, that's Mount Eerie or The Microphones, I would recommend you give some of Jandek's music a listen. Hanarash goes beyond what any other act on this list so far has done. They were a Japanese noise rock band formed in the 1980s, and I've seen some conflicting sources as to who the members of the band were. Like, I've seen some places say that they have a bunch of members, but the two names that always come up are Yamantaka Ai and Mitsuru Tabata. Although the first guy might actually be called Yamatsuka Ai, again, conflicting sources, hard to know. When I say noise rock, I'm referring to a subgenre of rock, featuring more noisy elements. But I honestly think that in the case of Hanarash, it's the genre of noise with some rock elements. Because they took it to the next level, featuring industrial objects as instruments like power tools and saws. They genuinely make Steve Albini sound like Jack Antonoff. Like a couple bands I've mentioned here already, Hanarash are most infamous not for their actual music, but for their concerts. Whether it be throwing panes of glass at the audience, throwing a dead cat at the audience, strapping a saw to themselves and nearly cutting their leg off. Whatever this is. And of course, probably their most noteworthy show, where the lead singer drove a bulldozer through the wall of the venue into the crowd and chased the crowd around. Like a lot of their performances, there's no video of this happening, but there are some photos of the aftermath. He then tried to burn the wreck of the bulldozer with a Molotov cocktail, but he was stopped by security and the concert ended. By some absolute fucking miracle, nobody was seriously hurt. And after the whole thing, Yamantaka Ai was interviewed about the incident, where he said he was disappointed that the bulldozer wasn't loud enough. The band had to pay for repairs, and most venues wouldn't let them perform, so they had to tone down the violence and chaos of their performances going into the 90s. Yamantaka Ai joined a new band called Boredoms, which had a sound that's more like psychedelic rock. Definitely check out their album Vision Creation New Sun if you get the chance. It's instrumental only, but it's still very good. Chances are, if you've heard of any other band on this list already, you've also heard of Swans. Since their debut in the early 80s, this band has had many changes in the style and sound of their music, mostly because the lineup is always changing. The only member, to my knowledge, who's been in the band the whole time is frontman Michael Gira. Even though other elements of their sound are always changing, the one thing that has always remained true about Swans is that their music is heavy. Not heavy in the same way that, say, heavy metal is heavy, which is because of its angry and distorted elements. Swans is heavy in terms of sonic force. Their signature style is relentless repetition, emotional weight, and crushing atmospheres that create a wall of droning but powerful sound. They originally started as part of the no-wave scene in New York, with albums like Filth and Cop having a really harsh and aggressive sound, before they moved into some more folky sounding stuff with albums like White Light from the Mouth of Infinity, before they finally ended up with Soundtracks for the Blind in 1996, an experimental masterpiece that fuses post-rock, field recordings, industrial electronic sounds, and other generally ominous stuff. They then disbanded, but would reform in the late 2000s and go on to create what is now known by fans as the Trilogy, consisting of The Seer, To Be Kind, and The Glowing Man. Each of these albums are around 2 hours long, featuring songs that range in length from 3 minutes to 34. The Seer borders on being a horrorcore album, using its sound to create a creepy and ominous atmosphere, which is complemented well by Michael Gira's lyrics and delivery, which makes him sound like a villain in a movie. It's just overall a really unsettling experience. To Be Kind is a lot more focused on being a rock album than its predecessor, but it keeps all of the sonic intensity intact by really leaning into the repetition, which drills each note deep into your brain and creates something like a hypnotic, sometimes aggressive, but completely enthralling wall of sound. Finally, The Glowing Man is a lot less in your face than the previous two albums. It has a more entrancing sound, and the songs here have an average length much greater than the last two albums as well. But that might make the grand crescendos and violent explosions even better than they already were, because you really have to have the patience for them. And Swans are still making music today. A couple weeks ago, they released their new album Birthing, which is supposedly their final album that'll have this big sound style. As such, it sounds like a love letter to the style, seemingly fusing elements from all of their previous work into one crushing but brilliant whole. The music of Swans is not for everyone, their albums are really long, the songs are repetitive and drone on, but there is a very good reason that they have such a big cult following. And that's all I have for today. As I said at the start, most of this list comes from artists and bands that you guys recommended in the comments of my other video about weird music. If you'd like to see another video like this, make sure to subscribe and tell me about some more artists I should include in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.